Hello, my name is Jesse, and I've been a film and video, TV producer, editor, director for about 20 years. Today I'm going to do something different and turn the camera on myself. I've been posting videos online since before YouTube existed, but I've never made something like this until now. Over the years, I've had amazing experiences, working with celebrities, swimming with whales, meeting heads of state, and I've faced my share of challenges, divorce, dozens of moves, financial struggles, but through it all, my career has always felt like it's been on the rise and the up and up. But that trajectory changed in December 2024 when Canada Post went on strike, and I absolutely hit my breaking point. It wasn't just about shipping delays. I basically lost my mind. I strained all my relationships and faced the harsh realities of running a 3D printed business as a solo entrepreneur. So this video is a cautionary tale about the hidden dangers of growth, commerce, and building a 3D printing business. It's the first installment of my journey to create a successful and sustainable enterprise, and how that journey pretty much pushed me to the brink. Welcome to the first episode of Print and Play. To preface the story, I've been a video guy for a couple decades, and I've worked in nearly every sport you can think of, but long story short, I ended up spending the second half of my career becoming the video guy in the sport of curling. I traveled around the world with the best curling teams that ever existed, making documentaries, making friends, producing features for televised broadcast, eventually just becoming a staple member of the management team for one of the sport's biggest franchises. Generally, I get tasked with most things technological in nature. And one day I was asked about the feasibility of making our own LED neon signage. After watching a few videos, I was into it, and with my girlfriend 9 months pregnant, I started a journey into low voltage LED art. So the week my first and only child was born, I was putting together my first batch of neon LED curling lights for the big curling bonspiel that was taking place around the corner from our condo. It felt like I was starting something for my newborn daughter, something that was beyond the video career that I spent my whole life building. I hadn't really worked out all the kinks yet. Using acrylic sheets and all the glue and wiring was definitely something I could improve upon. And after watching a video about 3D printing channels for neon LED strip, I grabbed my first 3D printer and got to work trying to simplify the neon LED lamp business for myself. First, I got hard into neon LED curling rocks. They paid for the printer, and then they paid for a second printer. I developed a type of lithophane lamp using AI designs to create 3D printed height maps that became the namesake of my company, Letter Lamps, and then I sold like maybe 8 of them, which sucked. And then I made an adaptation of Sousaphone's Dummy 13 robot into a USB-C powered lamp. And it's awesome. I call it the lamp lighter, and it's an action lamp or action figure lamp. I really thought these would go ham, and after some posts on Facebook, I started getting a lot of orders for them. One of those orders was for an old boss or mentor that I hadn't spoken to in years. So I asked if I could drop his off in person and that we get lunch and catch up. Finally, I would say this is kind of where the story actually begins. Over the course of my video career, I consider myself to have had 3 mentors. An editing mentor, my first senior editor at a TV network. He taught me that if something doesn't work, make it work. Then a directing mentor, a guy who used to leverage my production skills for his own creations and benefit. But I learned how to do what he was doing and how to direct people in turn. He taught me that there was always money in sports. Finally, there was a technology mentor. The CTO from a media company I was at years ago, who really took me under his wing to foster my interests in coding and technology. He inadvertently taught me that I should just wait for computers to code for me, and I was right. It was this old boss and mentor who had purchased one of these little robot lamps from me from my online store, and I was just pleased as punch that he liked it enough to do so. At our lunch, he mentioned his fascination with lighting and advancements in 3D printing, and he proceeded to tell me a story about a young man that him and some partner investors had gotten involved with. who was 3D printing supplies for companies in the auto industry here in Canada, but that the whole thing fell apart because the young man had run into some severe mental health problems. We chatted some more and parted ways, but that story resonated with me. I felt like that was where I could do better. Given the same opportunities with some big corporate customers and tons of orders, I wouldn't snap under the pressure and have the same issues going on. That's where I would succeed. And truth be told, less than 9 months later, I thought I was on the track to succeed. I had opened a second store under the Print and Play brand, making 4 storefronts total between my Shopify sites and Etsy stores. I had licensed and created a few amazing products, and I had been building in sales steadily. What started as a few orders a week became an average of an order per day, and that made way for a few orders per day. Everything was pretty much culminating up to the Black Friday to holiday season stretch for the end of the year 2024. And it wasn't an avalanche, it was kind of more like a flood. I unpaused my stores just before I got back from a work trip, and I had a stack of 18 packing slips waiting for me when I got home. Okay, so this is what I wanted, but a couple days later, it was about 30, and so on. Just as soon as I started getting the first of the orders complete and dropped off to the post office, the unthinkable popped up and Canada Post went on strike. So when I say unthinkable, I mean because I never thought that Canada Post was going to go on strike, let alone for Black Friday and holiday season. I never thought I'd end up in that scenario where all 4 of my storefronts across both Shopify and Etsy were allowing people to make purchases and pay for shipping while selecting the low rates offered by Canada Post. The next thing I know, my stack of packing slips had ballooned out to about 50 orders, plenty with multiple units, all on average paying about $12 per order in shipping. And when I say that everything had been leading up to this particular season, I say it because compared to last Christmas, my operation had grown by over 700%, no matter how you slice it. From 2 printers to 16 printers, from maybe 10 spools of filament at any given time to, I don't want to know, I don't want to say. I have enough length of 5-volt LED strip in reserve to illuminate a Santa's village worth of buildings. I have USB-C ports, pounds of solder, a sweet setup with an endless supply of YouTube documentaries to digest in the background while I chip away at lamps and toys. In theory, I can bang out a couple dozen of anything I offer per day, no matter how complicated. So, what's the issue? It starts when I start having to select shipping options for the first dozen or so orders. Etsy and Shopify hadn't really reacted yet. They were still letting people select Canada Post shipping prices on every order. Normally that's okay. I don't fully pretend to understand it, but the way it normally works is that when somebody buys your product on either of these 2 platforms, and you've set things up so that every product has its associated weight and fits into the associated size box and has an associated shipping service that you offer, the site generates a shipping cost for them based on location and the aforementioned dimensional data of your product. Every customer pays this generated price when they purchase a product. Yes, you can offer fixed rate shipping, flat rates, free shipping, etc. But when you're an upstart fabrication or illumination company or whatever it is, I feel like it's fair to stay fair. Offer reasonable and competitive prices and offer reasonable shipping rates in a world where Amazon Prime exists. Usually this means that by the time I actually move the order to fulfillment and pay for shipping myself, the cost is only $1 or $2 off. Sometimes you make $1, sometimes you lose $1. Sometimes you bump up their shipping to express as a bonus because you feel good about it and you're building reputation, especially with marketplaces like Etsy, way of the road. But then there's a postal strike. And Etsy keeps letting people select what is again, on average, about $12 in shipping per order, and Shopify keeps letting people select what is on average about $12 in shipping per order. And again, just to reiterate that you've kept your prices and margins low in order to build up a steady rep, there's not a ton of wiggle room to work with. So the options are actually pay for Canada Post labels that aren't gonna work, or go pay for an expensive courier service. As far as I knew, Canada Post was still accepting parcels because they were allowing me to purchase labels online through the online portals. So that first dozen or so orders came with me to the post office, where a postal worker was actually present and told me they couldn't accept packages, standing behind the counter, bragging that the last time that they were on strike, it lasted for 5 weeks. This was right before Black Friday and the holidays. If I had known the implications of what this would cost me, how much it would sway my opinion on our national postal service, which is already crazy expensive compared to Amazon prices, which is why things like Stallion Express exist in Canada. They literally take all your packages on a truck and drive across the border to the USA and mail everything using the more affordable postal service there. No affiliation, just making a point. Anyway, after waiting a week or so, my pile of finished up orders had stacked up to over 30, and I was slowing down my production out of apprehension of what to do next. Reluctantly, I took all my packages to the UPS store to get all my packages to the people who had been waiting for a hot minute by that point. I knew that I wouldn't be the only one doing this, and honestly, I was pretty surprised when I got to the location and there was only a few people ahead of me. I didn't know if they would do all the paperwork, if all of my names and addresses were ready to go, but the answer was no. I had to do all the paperwork for all 32 or whatever of those initial orders were. People started loading up in the store, lining up. The staff was saying I was there first and they had to wait, and that was just crazy. So we just started processing 5 or so at a time, and I would get back in line when I had a bunch of other forms filled out. People were coming in to send letters and cards that should normally just get dropped off at the post office. The place really filled up and stayed filled up for the 3 or 4 hours that I was there just to get everything sent out. So that's the spear tip of problem A. Shipping is taking more time. Then comes time to pay the bills, which leads to problem B. The minimum postage cost has shot up to about $24, pretty much twice the average price paid by the customers. Some of these packages are going to random and crazy places, and all of a sudden I'm sending an $11 kids rattle to a farm in rural Scotland for $178. Not every order is like that, but let's say 10% are going to crazy places. Crazy relative to where I am in the center of North America. In a perfect world, I would have amazing profit margins, but again, I am living in a world where I've kept my prices pretty low in order to boost sales, reviews, and reputation for good value. I've loaded up on a lot of supplies and spent a fair bit more than I had up to that point so that I don't get caught without, say, USB-C ports. This is where I push right over that 200 sales figure on my first Etsy store, and where I can set some new personal records on my Shopify sites. Value is the key here, and I don't want to start canceling orders on customers who are no doubt relying on these as holiday gifts, many of which are marked as gifts, being sent to other people with personal messages, etc. So I don't want to let these people down. But let's say on a $30 lamp that costs me maybe $8 to make, it is now going to cost an extra $12 to ship. And again, because that average price that they paid was only $12, and now it's costing me $24. So I'm only making $10 on this unit. Yes, I have sold dozens and dozens of units, but what about the ones that are costing me more than $24 to ship? Not only do they make that unit unprofitable, but they also steal the profit from several other units. Ironically, that most expensive shipping label that I had to pay for, which I mentioned previously, to a farm in Scotland, was probably also the least expensive sale. Sure, I could probably count the number of these kinds of extreme shipping cost orders on my two hands, and maybe those are the ones that I should have actually canceled and refunded. But by this point, I just wanted to get it done. In the end, the average shipping label ate into $10 of its unit's profitability by default. And for every 10th order costing 10 times that shipping price, it basically negated at least an additional $10 profit from each of those 9 orders leading up to it. Purchasing shipping labels without the automated convenience provided by Etsy and Shopify is a full-time job in its own right. Between starting my day swapping out build plates on my machines, to wiring lights and packing up orders, normally just selecting a bunch of checkboxes for orders and clicking a purchase labels button is the easy button at the end of the job. The printer prints them all out. All you have to do is stick them on. They just bill you all at once or add it to your monthly bill, and it's amazingly convenient. Not when Canada Post is on strike. It took them a couple of weeks, but eventually Etsy stopped letting shop owners purchase labels in Canada at all. and I'm assuming they're still penalizing late orders. Shopify would allow you to purchase Canada Post labels, which you would not be able to drop off, and to be fair, they did facilitate domestic orders within Canada on UPS, but not to the United States, where probably 99% of my orders go. Which means using the UPS website and filling out the details for every order and purchasing every label individually. Even doing it at home with my own computer and my own thermal printer was still taking 3 or 4 hours a day on top of actually producing everything. And then I'd likely be rushing to drop off before the drop-off location closed for the night, only to go home, make dinner for my family, go to bed, and start again. So at this point, I'm at max capacity thanks to an additional 60% of time required to process shipping. Holidays are approaching, and I can't even make time for my family. This whole new insane routine is about a week in, and all I'm doing is orders and shipping labels and printing. I think I've encountered my second extruder clog or major print failure, something that cost like 10 hours, and I fucking snapped. I honestly lost my mind and started screaming and swearing, and I would have started destroying the machines, but I just yelled. I might have thrown something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I threw something. Basically, blackout rage. My girlfriend came downstairs to the workshop and was obviously pretty upset. And she said the one thing that resonated with me that actually leads me to the point of the whole story. This isn't worth it. And I heard that. Even though I tried to just walk away and hide in the laundry room, I think, just to avoid conflict with the mother of my child. I heard that though. How worth it was this? I had spent a year busting ass grinding through orders, selling LED light boxes and neon strip signs for less than people can get them from China. I had brute forced my way to that 700% growth in capacity only to recognize that I couldn't work any harder. Yes, all of the machines had effectively paid for themselves or each other through hundreds of orders and so much time and effort, but this was it. My margins aren't high enough to justify paying for an extra body. My girlfriend and toddler don't know how to solder or 3D print anything, and they're probably also starting to hate me. Problem C, family. What is the point if I can't make time for my family, let alone have a social life or time for recreation or time to experience my nearly 2-year-old daughter growing up? Normally, I might be netting a few $100 extra a week, and that can help pay for groceries and stuff, but when success basically starts to look like failure, and at what honestly might end up being between a 10 and 15% loss because of a postal strike, I think it's time to reevaluate the priorities and how to move forward with this endeavor. That's why, after about 1 week of my stores increasing in sales exponentially every day and packing slips piling up, I decided to pause everything and stop taking orders. It took a few more days to catch up on the pile, but even just as soon as I had decided to take a break from the whole thing, still weeks away from Christmas, I felt an enormous relief come over myself. If I'm only making a few bucks per order, I'm better off taking a minute to optimize and improve for my family and my well-being and mental health. I couldn't stop thinking about the young man that my mentor had mentioned in passing all those months previous. The one who had lost all his promising 3D printed automotive parts business to some form of undetailed mental health episode. Has the same thing happened to me? Is this the curse of success in starting a 3D printing business? Was this a money pit doomed to failure that would only cost me, my family, and my home? I don't think it's an overreaction to consider the extremity and the gravity of the possibilities that I face moving forward. Enough of those YouTube documentaries I watch in the background have detailed people far greater than I who have faltered so much more. But just the same, have these moments been the ones that determine success, the crucible from which greater things emerge. I have worked very hard to become a star seller on Etsy. That lasts for 3 months. So I have 3 months to improve, improvise, and pivot my offering without compromising my status on that particular platform. That's a good time frame to work with, and 3 months is longer than I've ever needed to do most things in my life, so let's do it. I have little doubt in my mind that if I had continued to allow that situation to spiral out of control, my girlfriend would have left me with our child, or kicked me out, or worse. And obviously, something happened and I did manage to turn everything around. But before I let you in on how I pivoted my business and started making enough time and money to get my life back on track, which I'll do in another video, let's go over the learning lessons from this particular apple. Number 1, The hidden costs of growth. Scaling a business is often viewed as a success metric, but rapid growth can introduce unexpected challenges. Growth without preparation can amplify inefficiencies, overwhelm resources, and strain mental health. Walk before you can run, and then never stop walking. Let everything else around you run. Number 2, the impact of external dependencies. Relying on third parties like Canada Post exposes businesses to vulnerabilities beyond their control. Overdependence on external systems can jeopardize operations, highlighting the importance of contingency planning. If everything you've been working for can get snatched away because of something like a postal strike or not having access to materials, then think of something that doesn't require that dependency. Number 3, the human cost of overwork. Balancing a burgeoning business and personal life can create immense pressure, leading to emotional strain and fractured relationships. Prioritizing work at the expense of family and well-being can erode what truly matters. Make sure you don't lose sight of what you're in this for in the first place. And finally, number 4, the perils of thin margins. Keeping prices low to build reputation leaves little room for error, turning challenges into crises when costs rise unexpectedly. Sustainable pricing and profitability are essential for long-term success, even at the risk of slower growth. Consider every aspect of what goes into your product or service, whether it be the cost of materials or your time. Compensate for every single one of these things. Otherwise, you might find that the rainbow that you've been chasing all along is really just a failure that you haven't found out about yet. Minimize exposure, maximize success. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, share, or subscribe. It will help substantially in the growth of whatever it is we end up doing here together. And let me know if you think I can get away with starting a Patreon. Obviously, doing this takes a lot of time. Everything I do costs a lot of money. If you want to see me kind of flesh this out into a bigger series of installments, if you want to help me grow my workshop or get behind my secret projects, let me know by just backing me on Patreon. You'll get behind the scenes updates about what's going on at Print and Play every week, early access to videos, discounts at my stores, and so much more. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.